Welcome to part 2 of tactical analysis, and the setup again is the Yonex SV98 Lite, and in the racket we've got Prince Tournament Nylon 1.38 as a full bed. For those that are interested, the string tension is 55 pounds. And we'll do what we usually do. We'll go through a few pros, a few cons, and then I'll round up where I think the improvements can go from there. So it'll be an interesting one. We've got clips from 2 practice matches in this video. One was played on a gritty hard court where the surface wasn't quite true. It was a good surface, a good match, but some shots deviated from its usual path. And in the second match, we've got a practice session played on artificial clay, so that was interesting as well. 2 of my least favoured surfaces, so will be a great test of the setup. Let's get into it. In part 1, I touched on how this setup was much more consistent than previous setups we've been testing. That extra length control more than made up for the, in theory, lower height and trajectory control. I felt like all round it was quite outstanding, in fact, and a player that usually I wouldn't count myself as more consistent than. I felt like in neutral rallies I almost had the percentages in my favour, so that was an interesting feeling and one that I'm not used to. So hopefully we will go into these 2 matches with the same characteristics that we experienced in the past, and seeing as the surfaces are slower and are more higher bouncing, I'm definitely going to need that, because they're both very skilled, they're very consistent, really good at neutralizing. And so if I can stay on the front foot even after they neutralize and continue pressuring over and over, I'm hoping that will be enough to break through their defenses. On these surfaces, naturally, you are going to find that during the rally, you'll switch between an offensive position to a neutral position and a defensive position more often than you would on a quicker, slicker surface. And so access to all 3 strategies is really important. That means when defending, you've got abbreviated strokes as an option. You've got the backhand slice, different heights, maybe to push your opponent back. Obviously neutral, you've got to be able to maneuver your opponent, and when presented with the opportunity, apply additional pressure and offensive strategies when the ball is short or when you have the opportunity to come in and finish at the net. Again, it's important that the setup provides you access to these strategies. And to be honest, I feel like while the setup wasn't outstanding in all 3 aspects, you definitely were able to execute, given the right technique, you were able to execute all 3 strategies to a decently high level, I thought. And I wouldn't be opposed to anyone taking this sort of setup into a tournament situation. That's how highly I thought of it. I was able to neutralize points much more often than not, which you're going to have to on these surfaces. And also it's important that the setup provides you with consistent attacking strategies. It's no good being able to hit 1 or 2 great shots in a rally. When you're up against skilled opponents, you're going to have to do that over and over again over the course of a set, over the course of a match. And so being able to rely on that consistent length control, rely on that consistent height and trajectory control is so important. It doesn't matter how good your technique is. If the setup isn't dialed in correctly, you don't stand a chance against skilled players. And this setup, it does, whether it's attacking or defending or in neutral situations where you're looking to maneuver your opponent, you really do have access to every shot in the book. And that's important. That's very important. On the grittier hard court, I felt like it dealt with the uneven bounces pretty well. So if I had to adjust my technique at the last second, I could rely on the consistency from that setup to be able to deal with that. And And for the clay, it's artificial clay, but not quite as high bouncing as true clay. Still in the sun, you are going to get those shots above your shoulders, especially when you're at my height. But again, the setup dealt with it really well, especially on the backhand side. I felt like I could slice that ball to a reasonable length every single time and neutralize it, or even in some situations, slice that hard and break the sideline to actually force my opponent into an uncomfortable position, to where some would say I was in a defensive position, and I've been able to turn that around with one shot into an offensive position. So interesting. Yeah, the backhand slice as one of my main shots, it's important that the setup allows me access to that shot, and not just in a linear fashion. I need access to the slice where I can use the angles, I can break the sideline, I can use drop shots as well. I need all of that in order to make my slice shot as effective as possible. It's no good really just being a defensive or a neutral shot. For me especially, because of the frequency with which I use it, it has to be able to do all three: attack, neutralize and defend. And the setup, while not exceptional, is able to do all three. And so good stuff on both surfaces. I was quite happy with the result. And one of my worries going into these two matches was because of the slower surface. I felt like perhaps we might have a issue getting the ball through the court. That didn't really seem to be the case. I felt like because I could play with reasonable confidence in the trajectory control, I could play lower over the net with less margin for error and not fear too much about increasing my error rate. And with that, because I can play with low margin for error, I could attack the ball with a bit more aggression. And I want to be clear here, I wasn't very aggressive, I wasn't hitting out on many shots. I was more applying pressure by hitting deep and using angles and keeping the ball low over the net. So if I miss my spot, because the ball is so low, it was still a shot that put my opponent under enough pressure to where they would feel, in my opinion, that they would have to neutralize again. And it's interesting because when you play with strings that are lower in stiffness, the first thing that tends to go is the height control, is the trajectory control. And the trade-off for that is you get a little bit more feel, you get a little bit more length control. But obviously if you take that too far, it doesn't matter how much length control you have. If you can't control the height of the ball, then you may as well not go onto court. So at the moment, this string is providing enough control in both departments, and that's definitely noteworthy. It means that we can play on a variety of surfaces and still maintain that effectiveness in terms of getting the ball through the court, off the surface, with enough speed to where if we need to come in behind it, if we need to start attacking the net, then we can do so without fear of being passed too often. Obviously, when you play opponents that are as skilled as the ones you see in these clips, you're going to get passed no matter how good your approach is sometimes. But as long as the percentages are in our favour, it's all good. It's all good. The next point I wanted to touch on is not surface dependent, but it's important because I've moaned in the past a lot about my first serve percentage. The setups that we've been using, the polyesters, they are so powerful that I have no control over the length of these serves. So it doesn't matter if I'm serving 100 mile an hour, 110 mile an hour plus. If that serve percentage is, below 30%, what's the point? And on top of that, it's tiring as well. 70% of serves are just, you're wasting your time really. Well, I'm wasting my time. With this particular setup, with these strings, in fact, my serve percentage went up by quite a bit. I mean, it was at least 55%. I haven't done the calculations. I don't have the patience to sit through the entire 3 to 4 hours of video and count every serve. Just from an estimate, I would say it was at least 55%, which for me is great. I'm more than happy with that. I do have the trade-off, which is less serve speed, but the increase in serve percentage and more control over the placement of the ball, so I can actually hit spots closer to the sidelines and the tee. It makes a huge difference. It means even though I'm hitting medium pace first serves, my opponents aren't able to attack them. A lot of the time I feel like they are just happy to start off at neutral, and I'm really happy to see that myself. So a big improvement. It means that my service games are easier to hold. I don't waste so much energy hitting the first serves out. And on top of that, I have access to more serve plus one strategies. If I know I can rely on my placement of the serve, then I can plan the next shot. And from there, we can build on different tactics and try and lean into situations where our opponents' percentages are not in their favour and in ours. So yeah, we aren't going to hit as many aces. We aren't going to get as many... Well, actually, funnily enough, we do get quite a few free points. I don't know why that is. Maybe it is the placement causing discomfort, or the medium pace getting into our opponents' heads where they feel as if, you know, this serve isn't really putting me under pressure. Maybe I should attack it. But the serve is placed well. The serve's staying low because of my height. It's not as easy as it looks to attack, and maybe they're over pressing on it. Something to take note of. I'll observe that as we test future setups with similar characteristics such as this one. But yeah, definitely something to mention, the increase in first serve percentage, allowing us access to more serve plus one strategies. Also worth mentioning that I have changed my serving technique from a pinpoint, if you can call it that, a pinpoint stance, to a platform stance. That was because I was searching for a higher first serve percentage. It didn't work with the polyesters. The only time that it's worked has been with this string. Again, it demonstrates the importance of getting the setup correct. No matter how good your technique is, if the setup is not giving you access to the strategies you want to execute on court, you're not going to execute it. It's as simple as that. Hopefully that makes sense. And that brings us to the close of this video. Just to recap, we went through the effectiveness of the setup when transitioning from offensive strategies to neutral to defensive strategies, and the transition was pretty seamless. It was effective in all three parts of the game, and on slower surfaces, obviously that's really important because you're going to find yourself in rallies where you switch between all three more often than you would find yourself on a quicker surface. So very important to have access to all three strategies. And also we touched on the first serve percentage being higher. That combined with my new technique being the platform stance. The platform stance didn't work with the more powerful setups, the polyesters in particular, like the Technofiber Razor Code 1.20, but they certainly did improve my first serve percentage this time with the Prince Tournament Nylon. So the extra feel from this string really does help the serve. And on top of that, Because our percentage is higher, we now have access to more serve plus one strategies, although it comes at the cost of less serve speed and aces. But I'm more than happy with that trade-off, because the low percentage of first serves before was a joke. Overall, I'm very happy with the setup. We definitely have improved on the Razor Code 1.20. Sorry, Technofiber, you tried, but this is superior. Much superior than that string. And so Prince Tournament Nylon is definitely improvement, and we'll continue to try and take this out further. I'm going to use a different racket in the next experiment. I'll detail that as we get into it. I'll upload some of these sessions, and then I'll do another review of the racket with this particular string in it, so it will be a fair comparison. Looks like we're moving on from polyesters. It was a good run, or really was it? I'm not sure. Thank you everyone for watching this episode of Tactical Analysis. I do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, it might be worth checking out the other content on this channel and staying tuned for future experiments that I have lined up, and hopefully I'll see you all there. So until then, everyone, take care.